I never stay in one country for a long time. It gets boring. I like to move on, see new places, and meet different people. It's a good life most of the time. When I need money, I pick fruit in Europe. You can pick fruit most of the year. You need to be in the right country at the right time, of course. It's not easy work, but the money is not bad. I like to go south in the winter. Life is easier in the sun, and northern Europe can get very cold in winter. Last year, 1989 I was in Venice for October. I did some work in a hotel for 3 weeks, then I began slowly to move south. I always go by train when I can. I like trains. You can walk about on a train and meet a lot of people. I left Venice and went on to Trieste, where I got a cheap ticket for the slow train to Sofia in Bulgaria. This train goes all down through Yugoslavia and takes a long time, about a day and a half. But that didn't matter to me. The train left Trieste at 9 on a Thursday morning. There weren't many people on it at first, but at Zagreb, more people got on. 2 girls went along the corridor, 1v1, past my carriage. They looked through the door but didn't come in. Then an old woman came in, sat down, and went to sleep. The 2 girls came back along the corridor and looked into the carriage again. The train left Zagreb, and I looked out of the window for about 10 minutes, then I went to sleep too. After this point, I will build the emotional transitions and the adventure. When I opened my eyes again, the 2 girls were in the carriage. They looked friendly, so I said hello. Hi, they said. You're American, I asked. Or Canadian, right? American, the taller girl said. She smiled. And you're 23. Your name's Tom Walsh, you've got blue eyes, and your mom lives in Burnham-on-Sea, UK, right? How did you know all that? I asked. The second girl laughed. She looked at your passport. It's in your coat pocket. Oh, right. My coat was on the seat next to me. I took my passport out of my pocket and put it back in my bag. Who are you then? I asked. They told me. Melanie and Carol from Los Angeles, USA. They liked Europe, they said, and they knew a lot of places. Britain, Holland, Denmark, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Greece. I'm going to Bulgaria now, I said, for about a month. Then I'm going south for the winter, Cyprus or perhaps North Africa. Oh yes, they said. We love Bulgaria. Sofia's a great town. Wonderful. At this point, the tone remains light and adventurous. However, as Tom grows closer to the girls, the tone shifts slightly into suspense and uncertainty. Tom feels excitement and curiosity, eager to share his journey with his new friends. He tells them about his plans and listens intently as they talk about their adventures. However, there's a subtle change, a feeling that something is off. Melanie and Carol's laughter starts to sound less genuine. Their smiles forced. Tom's mind races with questions. Why were they so interested in his plans? Why were they so eager to know every detail about him? Hey Carol, Melanie said at one point, we're staying in Bella Palanca for a day or two, but let's go over to Sofia this weekend and meet Tom there. We can meet him on Saturday night at the Hotel Marmora. Tom nodded, trying to shake off his doubts. Sure, sounds great. The train continued its slow journey, and night fell. The carriage grew quiet, except for the occasional whispers from the girls and the sound of the train's wheels clacking against the tracks. Tom couldn't help but wonder if he had made the right choice in befriending these strangers. Were they truly as friendly as they seemed, or was there something more? By the time they reached Belgrade, Tom's uneasiness had grown. When the girls suggested he join them for dinner in the restaurant car, he hesitated. I don't have much money right now, he admitted. I'm planning to get a job in Sofia. Melanie and Carol exchanged a glance, and Melanie said, Don't worry about it, Tom. We've got you covered. Besides, it's nice to have someone like you around. Their kindness seemed genuine, but Tom still couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. As he and Melanie walked down the corridor, he noticed the eyes of other passengers following them. Some curious, others wary. Was it because of the girls, or was it because of him? At dinner, the conversation was light and enjoyable, but Tom felt an undercurrent of tension. He tried to push the thoughts aside, telling himself it was just his imagination. But the feeling remained. As the night deepened and the train moved further into unknown territories, Tom's mind began to wander. What if these girls were not who they claimed to be? What if their friendliness masked a more sinister intent? His heartbeat quickened as he thought of the stories he had heard. Stories of travelers disappearing, of tourists being tricked into dangerous situations. But he brushed the thoughts away, trying to focus on the positives. After all, they seemed harmless, and he was excited about the adventures that awaited him in Sofia. He imagined the warmth of the city, the hustle of the markets, and the freedom of exploring new streets. For a moment, he allowed himself to relax. The train continued its journey into the night, and the girls returned to their seats. Tom tried to sleep, but his mind raced with possibilities. Would they meet in Sofia? Would everything turn out as planned, or was this journey about to take an unexpected turn? The night was deepening, and the train chugged steadily onward through the vast Yugoslavian landscape, casting long shadows across the carriage. Tom found it difficult to sleep. The uneasy feeling from earlier lingered in his chest. The girls, Melanie and Carol, sat across from him, chatting quietly. He wondered what they were talking about, their voices a murmur beneath the train's rumble. He had always been drawn to adventure, to the thrill of new places and the unknown. Yet, as he looked at their faces, half lit by the dim glow of the overhead light, he couldn't help but feel like he was being led into something he didn't fully understand. Their eyes sparkled with a confidence he both admired and feared. Why were they so interested in him? And why had they chosen him out of all the other passengers? Just as Tom felt his eyelids growing heavy, the train jolted, and he was startled awake. The two girls exchanged a glance, and Melanie gave a small, knowing smile. "What's wrong, Tom?" she asked, her voice soft and teasing. "You look nervous." Tom forced a laugh. "Just tired, I guess. Long journey, you know." Carol leaned in. "Don't worry, everything's gonna be fine. We'll have a great time in Sofia." There was something in her voice, something he couldn't quite place. It felt like a promise and a warning all at once. The train finally arrived at Bela Palanka. Melanie and Carol gathered their bags, reminding Tom of their plan to meet at the Hotel Marmura. As they stood on the platform, the train station's old lights flickering, Tom watched them disappear into the night, their figures vanishing into the fog that swirled around the station. A strange emptiness filled him as he sat back in the carriage, alone. He should have felt relieved, but instead there was a sense of loss, as if he had just let something important slip away. He stared at his reflection in the window, the darkness outside merging with the dim glow of the train's interior, creating a ghostly double. Was it just his imagination, or was there more to those two than he realized? When the train finally crossed into Bulgaria, Tom tried to sleep, but the sense of foreboding hung over him like a heavy cloud. Suddenly, he was awoken by loud voices and the commotion of footsteps. He rubbed his eyes and saw police officers moving through the train. The tension built as the officers moved closer. When they finally reached Tom's carriage, his heart pounded. Two officers, one tall and thin, the other short and stocky, gestured for him to step out. His mind raced. Why him? He had nothing to hide. "Come with us, please," the fat officer said in English, his eyes cold and expressionless. Tom felt a surge of panic. He grabbed his bag, clutching it tightly as he followed them out of the train. In the station building, the atmosphere was oppressive. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the faces of the other detained passengers. Tom saw fear etched into their expressions. Some looked like they were on the verge of tears, while others stared blankly, their faces pale. As the officers went through his bag, Tom's thoughts raced back to Melanie and Carol. They had been the last to touch his bag. Could it have been them? But why? His chest tightened with anger and confusion. He felt betrayed, but also foolish for trusting them so easily. A part of him still clung to the hope that it was all a mistake. When the packets of money tumbled out of his bag, the shock was overwhelming. Tom stared, mouth open, as the police officer's eyes widened in surprise. The reality of the situation hit him like a wave of ice-cold water. His pulse quickened, and he struggled to find his voice. "But it's not mine," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I don't know how it got there." The officers exchanged looks. The tall one sneered, a look of triumph on his face. "Of course it's yours. Look, your name is on the bag, isn't it?" Tom's eyes darted to his bag. It was his. There was no denying that. But the money, it was impossible. He felt the room closing in around him, the walls pressing in as the other officers began whispering, excitement in their eyes. For them, this was a catch, a young foreigner with a bag full of illegal money. And for Tom, it was the start of a nightmare. He tried to explain, to plead his innocence, but his words fell on deaf ears. The officer's expressions hardened, and the tall one leaned in closer, his face inches from Tom's. "You cannot bring US dollars into this country," he hissed. "And yet here we are." Tom's mind raced. Was this all part of a setup? Was Melanie's friendly smile and Carol's laughter all a trap? The train had felt like a sanctuary, a path to freedom. But now it was a prison, a one-way ticket to a place he had no control over. The station buzzed with activity as the train pulled away, leaving Tom stranded. He watched as it disappeared into the distance, a sense of despair settling over him. The life he had planned in Sofia, the adventures he had dreamed of, gone, just like that. The officers led him to a holding cell. It was small and cold, the walls covered in graffiti. Tom sat down on the hard bench, his mind replaying every moment with Melanie and Carol. Were they laughing at him now, somewhere out there? Or was this part of a bigger scheme, something beyond his understanding? Days turned into weeks as Tom navigated the murky waters of the Bulgarian justice system. The prison was a place of despair, but it was also a place where Tom met people who had stories of their own. One of them was Boris, a man with a thick Russian accent and a weathered face. Despite the rough surroundings, Boris had a twinkle in his eye, a survivor's spirit. Boris became a friend, someone Tom could confide in during the long days. "When I was young," Boris said one night, "I traveled too. Adventure was my life. But life, it has a way of surprising you." Tom nodded, feeling a sense of camaraderie. Boris's tales were full of twists, and some even made Tom laugh despite the bleakness. "When we get out of here," Boris continued, "we go to Australia, my friend. Brisbane, Sydney. We start fresh. We work hard. We live well." Tom felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of his journey. The winter in prison was harsh, but it was warm compared to the freezing streets of Northern Europe. He thought about Boris's dream and found himself wanting to believe in it. Maybe there was a way out of this, a way to turn things around. Tom's days in the Bulgarian prison began to merge into one long stretch of time. The cold concrete walls, the metallic clang of doors shutting, and the constant chatter in a language he barely understood created a dull rhythm that threatened to drain his spirit. But Boris, the Russian with the bright eyes and optimistic stories, became his anchor. Their friendship was one of the few things that gave Tom hope. Every night, Boris would sit by Tom recounting stories from his past. Back in Georgia, I had a life on the Black Sea. Beautiful sunsets, and the smell of the sea. It stays with you. His eyes would light up as he described the golden beaches and bustling docks. Tom could almost smell the salty air through Boris's words. As Boris talked about his dreams of Australia, Tom found himself slowly daring to hope again. "When we get out of here," Boris would say, a grin spreading across his face, "we'll catch a ship. I know a captain. He owes me a favor. Brisbane, Sydney, those cities are waiting for us." But prison life was not all dreams and plans. Tensions ran high among the prisoners, and fights broke out often. One night, Tom found himself caught in the middle of one. A group of prisoners, angry and desperate, lashed out. Tom felt a fist connect with his side, knocking the wind out of him. As he staggered back, he saw Boris charging forward, pushing the others away. "Leave him alone," Boris shouted, his voice echoing through the cold, dimly lit hall. With surprising strength for a man his age, he pulled Tom out of the fray, shielding him until the guards intervened. Tom, clutching his ribs, looked up at Boris, gratitude mingling with pain. "Why did you help me?" Boris shrugged, offering a small smile. "Friends take care of each other, Tom. In here, it's all we've got." It was a simple statement, but it hit Tom deeply. In that moment, he realized just how much he had come to rely on Boris. The old man had become like a mentor, a guiding light in the dark, uncertain days of imprisonment. Weeks passed, and as winter deepened, the prison felt colder than ever. One morning, Tom woke up to find his breath turning to mist in the frigid air. He wrapped his thin blanket around himself, shivering as he tried to gather any warmth he could. Boris noticed and tossed Tom an extra sweater he had managed to get from another prisoner. "Here, put this on," Boris said. "The cold can break a man's spirit faster than chains." Tom pulled the sweater over his head, feeling its warmth spread through his body. "Thanks, Boris." But as the days wore on, Tom noticed a change in Boris. The man who once seemed invincible began to cough, a deep, rattling sound that echoed through the cell. Boris tried to wave it off, saying it was just a cold, but the cough grew worse. One evening, as they sat huddled together, Boris's face paled, and he leaned heavily against the wall. "Tom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "if something happens to me, you must go on. You've got a life to live, my friend. Promise me you won't give up." Tom's eyes stung. "Don't talk like that. We're getting out of here together. Australia, remember?" Boris managed a weak smile. "Yes, Australia." But his eyes, once so full of life, seemed distant, as if he was looking at something far beyond the walls of the prison. The next morning, the guards came to take Boris to the infirmary. Tom watched as they led his friend away, his heart heavy with fear. Days passed, and there was no word about Boris's condition. Tom felt a loneliness he hadn't felt since his first night in the cell. The absence of Boris's stories and laughter made the prison feel even colder. Then one night, the guard returned with news that made Tom's world crumble. Boris had passed away. Pneumonia, they said. Tom felt a wave of grief crash over him. He had lost his only friend, the one person who had kept his hope alive. Sitting alone in his cell, Tom thought about everything Boris had told him. The dreams of Australia, the stories of the Black Sea. He clutched the sweater Boris had given him, feeling the rough fabric against his skin. It was all he had left of the man who had saved him. Tom's grief threatened to consume him, but he clung to Boris's final words. "Promise me you won't give up." He knew he couldn't let his friend's memory die in vain. Boris had believed in him, and now it was up to Tom to find a way out. Determined, Tom began to make connections with other prisoners, listening to their stories and learning from them. he discovered that some of them had smuggling routes and knew people on the outside who could help. Tom's charm and willingness to listen earned him allies. Slowly, he began to piece together a plan, a way to escape the prison and continue the journey that Boris had dreamed of. There were risks, of course. Getting caught meant more time in prison, or worse. But Tom knew that staying here meant letting Boris's sacrifice go to waste. One night, as he lay on his bunk, he made a vow. "I'll get out of here, Boris. I'll find that ship to Australia for both of us." The plan was set for a cold winter night when the guards would be less vigilant. Tom and two other prisoners, men he had befriended, slipped out of their cells, moving silently through the dimly lit corridors. Tom's heart pounded as they made their way to the courtyard, where a fence separated them from freedom. The air was icy, and their breaths came out in puffs of mist. Tom's hands trembled, not just from the cold, but from the fear of what might happen if they were caught. As they reached the fence, one of the men, Victor, pulled out a pair of wire cutters. The sound of metal snipping filled the silence, and Tom held his breath, praying they wouldn't be discovered. Every second felt like an eternity. Just as they created a small opening in the fence, the sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. Tom's eyes widened. "Quick," he whispered urgently. "Go, go." The men crawled through the gap, one by one. Tom was the last. As he squeezed through, he felt a hand grab his arm, rough, forceful. He spun around, his heart racing, only to see Victor pulling him out. "Hurry up," Victor hissed, yanking Tom through the fence just as a guard's flashlight swept past. They sprinted into the night, disappearing into the forest beyond the prison. The cold wind bit at their faces, but Tom felt a thrill. He was free. As they ran, he looked up at the night sky, stars twinkling above. Boris's face flashed in his mind, and Tom felt a surge of determination. As the cold wind swept through the forest and Tom disappeared into the night, he knew his journey was far from over. With every step, he carried Boris's memory and the promise of a new beginning. The road to freedom, filled with danger and uncertainty, would test his courage and resolve. But Tom was determined. He would find his way to Australia, and his adventures were only just beginning. Thank you for joining me on this thrilling adventure with Tom. If you enjoyed the story and want to improve your English through exciting narratives like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel, Easy English Class. Stay tuned for more stories, lessons, and engaging content designed to make learning English fun and easy. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update, and I'll see you in the next video.